So before we go into any discussions on salaries, I think it'd be nice if you both just gave a little bit of a background as to who you are, and maybe like just a quick sentence or two as well about your tech journey so far. So Leo, did you want to start?
Sure, yes. So I work as a software engineer at a company which specializes in adverse media and risk assessment. I started my consultancy company back in 2019. That was after I left college, and then after that, I had a variety of roles at some small businesses in the West Midlands. I had a role for a company based out in Brighton, and Brighton, not Bristol. I keep getting those two mixed up. I then moved to a medical technology company, and now I'm at Ripjar.
Perfect. Sean?
I've been at this a long time now. Started off in digital agencies down in Bournemouth, working in labs departments where I made a lot of weird stuff for, under the guise of, what will the future look like in 5 years' time and how can we do that now? But really, it was just fun. Then ended up joining the Financial Times, where I did pretty much the same thing, but for news media. Then transitioned over into developer advocacy and developer relations before moving to AWS for the UK and Ireland in the same role. And now I am the developer relations manager for a fintech in Bristol called Money Hub, as well as the CTO of my own company, CADVR, which focuses on using AI in virtual reality. So it's been a weird journey, but here we are.
Thank you so much. And my background is I've been doing this a year less than Sean, and the reason I know that is because we did the same university degree. But I started in a development agency, so I was doing a lot of like charity campaign work. I then went into a publishing house as well. I then freelanced for a bit. Then I went into a hardware product house called Hive. If anyone's used Hive and you're controlling your devices with your phone, I built that app. I'm sorry if it doesn't work, but I've not been there for 3 years, so now do not blame me. And also in that time, codebar's been, a thing, and now I actually work for codebar full time. So that's a little bit of background on me. And at any point in this is just a very relaxed conversation. So please do drop any questions that you have in the chat. This session is, designed to spark conversations on salary, because it is something that people often like to shy away from and not talk about. And I'm here to say that actually we need to talk about it a lot more so that people are paid what they are worth. And also particularly women, who are often paid less. So does anyone want to start by saying anything about salaries, or does anyone have anything to say?
They vary wildly, and you need to fight for every penny that's rightfully yours. And a good tool in that fight is to talk to your colleagues and be very open about what you're earning. It's much harder for a company to say that you're being paid the amount that you're due when your colleague that does the same job as you is making 10 or 20k more. You're like, well, hang on, I'm not sure how I feel about that. So it is something that we're all a bit shirty about, but we really should get comfortable with and try and encourage a culture where we can talk about these things. So we can at least collectively go, hang on, something's a bit askew here. This isn't really fair. And it does come down to fairness. You have a value and you bloody well should be paid it.
Yeah. Leo, do you have anything?
I think when you consider sort of, I at least believe that there are two sort of markets that are used to determine the value of one's labor. The first one is, of course, the internal market, comparing yourself or benchmarking yourself against your peers. And that's incredibly important. However, what we also do need to be wary of, what we also need to be mindful of, I think the more difficult aspect to quantify comes to that wider market. What am I worth to a particular employer? Yeah. And the reason for that is primarily because market economists make the assumption that when you have a variety of actors in the system, they all act rationally. So if you have if you have three individuals with exactly the same qualifications, you'll pay all three of them the same amount.
Yeah.
And that's not normally the case. What you see is some companies tend to be more rational than others. So, for example, some companies will pay more because they have more money. They want to secure the best talent. They've just done a seed round, and so they want to make sure that they can capture and retain. the best parts of the market. Other companies which know they have retention difficulties will, of course, offer you more money to keep you there, to attract you, to keep you there. And it's sort of, I think it's a little bit difficult to quantify when you're dealing with that external market. Hey, what am I worth? I think that's a difficult sort of. It's difficult to square that circle, as it were.
Yeah. And I think there's also an incredibly hard question to ask yourself, and also to answer it, because how do I know my worth? And actually that, and Sean, you touched on it as well, around they vary so wildly, both in terms of like location is obviously probably one of the biggest things. How, like, is there any research? Like, where would you go to look? Or is there anywhere? That's actually a question. Is there anywhere where you could go to say, is this company undercharging, or am I overpaid? Like, how do I know?
You have voluntary salary submissions that are anonymized on Glassdoor, and websites that are similar, which are quite nice to be able to say, okay, I'm looking at this job spec, but they don't list the salary, which to me is a red flag. If you're not upfront about what the salary range is, I'm not going to apply for that. But if I do want to have a little look around because the role is interesting, then historically I've gone to Glassdoor and said, right, who are the people who are in this line of work or a similar line of work, and what are their posted salaries? And importantly, how long ago was that? If it was 3 or 4 years ago, then that data is not handy. But if it's like 6 months ago, you have a sense of at least where some people in the company are and where they might be looking to, kind of price that around now. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that you should necessarily go in there asking for what you think they'll pay you. As a rule, I tend to go in with a 50% markup of where I am right now and let them haggle me down. Which has been surprisingly effective at getting me more than I really thought that they would do. But if you ask high, they can only go in one direction or meet you, which has happened twice now and was, very, very satisfying, shall we say.
Yeah. See, for me, that sounds terrifying. Like, I wouldn't have the guts to go in at that high. And like you said, pardon?
It can be daunting, but you've nothing to lose for asking what you want for, And if you really want the role, you'll already have haggled yourself down to a point where you take a certain amount in order to get that job because you think it's going to be a great opportunity to learn or grow. There are other values and other benefits to being in a company beyond the monetary compensation, right? People join startups because they want to grow in an area that they haven't been in quite yet, but they want to learn more about. So it's a nice opportunity to grow with that company. So there are different things there, and you'll dial it in accordingly. But it's good to have a sense of what would make you happy and what will pay the bills.
I completely agree with that. Sorry to jump in there. For me, the question now becomes, okay, we're asking for money. Well, what is money? Money can be exchanged for goods and services, and that when you think of it, your employer is giving you something that can be exchanged for goods and services. That's like one of the more tangible aspects of your entire compensation package. So I tend not only to focus on compensation packages, but also to focus on total compensation, primarily because what are the intangible benefits, or not even intangible, or what are some of the non-immediate benefits that I'm receiving from being part of from joining this enterprise or being part of this company. I remember actually receiving a job offer, and the salary was not the best, let's say. However, this is one of the best pension schemes I've ever seen. Effectively, what they do is normally with pensions, there's a 3-5 split. You, the employee, pay 5%, and the employer pays 3%, and you can increase that as much as you want. So if you pay 7%, your employer pays 3 as 10% pension. There was a company which said, okay, you can contribute anything up to 5%. And if you contribute 1%, what we'll do is we'll double that and add 1% to that. So if you contribute 1%, then we'll double that, add 1, and so we'll contribute 5% for 6% pension, all the way up to 5%. So if you, the employee, contribute 5%, we'll double that and add 1 for a 16% pension, which is, it's not something that's particularly tangible. You're not going to benefit from a 16% pension now. Or even over the course of your working life. If you attempt to take that money out, you will have hefty tax penalties. But the question now becomes, okay, what do I want out of employment? Not just the tangible cash in hand. Of course, we do need to be paid properly, but also, do I want the experience of being around colleagues who have been from a certain industry? Because certain types of company will attract certain types of people. Do I want to work in a particular location? Do I want to move? Does this company offer visa sponsorship? Is this company allowing me to explore technology that I haven't before? And they're willing to bring me in as a mid-level engineer based on my experience in a variety of other technologies. Does this company have a clear progression pathway? Does it have a clear way for it to effectively allow me to build a career here? And these are all the sorts of questions that you need to ask when considering your total compensation. You've got your pension, you've got your salary, you've got your benefits, but you've also got a myriad of intangible things that a company does offer and a company does provide.
Yeah, I think,
Absolutely.
Oh, go on.
Oh, I was just agreeing. Like, completely agree. Like, I mean, Leo, you mentioned location. I think, Kim, you hit on that earlier as well. I don't think location inside a country matters so much anymore because of the nature of remote and hybrid work that we have. I've been working hybrid since 2017, and I am based in London, so I am exposed to the opportunities as much as anyone else. But my work is not less valuable if it's done in Manchester or Glasgow or Cornwall versus London these days. If anyone is telling London, go on.
Oh, when I say location, I'm not referring to location within a particular country. I'm
exactly.
Remote advocates ever. I mean location internationally. So, for example, if I have a company if I have two job offers on the table, one of them wants me to work somewhere within the UK, the other one wants me to work somewhere within Ireland, the other one wants me to work somewhere within Portugal, for example. What I'm able to do is compare those three job offers, and regardless of what the salary is on those job offers, I may apply a higher weighting to a job that allows me, or the job that provides visa sponsorship and allows me to live overseas and attain some sort of goal there, be it cultural immersion, be it different citizenship, be it lower cost of living, so on and so forth. That's what I mean by location.
Take the Portugal offer, because it's going to be a lot more sunny.
Yes. Well, that was the next point I was going to make, is accepting opportunities where you can leave to go to another country, which is absolutely an incredibly valuable thing. I don't know if you've ever looked at visas or watching this, but they take a long time and they can be very expensive. And if you're a company willing to back you, and they're going to give you a little bit less in your back pocket while they do that, that's still a really good offer, particularly if it's where you want to be. So yeah, phenomenal opportunities there. Do look into those if you are looking for a new kind of lifestyle. Portugal do be very sunny.
And do you know one thing that changed my perspective of like the negotiating a salary when starting out, because it is horrible. No one likes talking about money. And it was my second job that I was in. And I heard them say they've been doing a round of interviewing and they found this guy, and he then rejected the offer because he said he was going to go and work somewhere else. And I heard the three people who had interviewed him say, "Oh, we really don't want to have to go through all that interview process again, so just offer him more money." And and it kind of goes back to what you said, Sean, about actually if you go in slightly higher, they're more likely probably to say yes, because actually the amount of time and hours required to get to the point where they are making you an offer, that's quite a lot of hours, because they've probably interviewed a lot of people. Some of those people may have got to a stage 2 and a stage 3. Some companies have multiple stages. And if they've then got to the point where they're going to offer you the job, they don't want to have to go back, start at the starting line again. And that, overhearing that conversation, changed the game for me. So then when I went to them, my job after them, and you see it often in these jobs, they'll go, "Oh, you're in a salary range of 35 to 45." And my instant reaction was to go low, because I was like, well, I'm not that good. And I was like, no, I'm going to go at the highest range here. And they said yes, because I was like, well, and I just kept telling myself that conversation that I overheard, because I don't know how many people they'd interviewed, and if they've then got to the point where they're offering it to me And they've put the range out, not me. And I'm going to go to the highest, of this £10,000 range.
They have budget for it, and no individual at the company is going to miss that, except maybe the accountant. But it can make such a difference to you and your life, and even with pension contribution as well. They can match to a certain degree, but the higher the number that you're taking home at the end of the week, the higher that percentage of your pension is going to be as well. So you're also planning for the future, which is fab. And the other side of that is when you're trying to leave a company, they may also offer you, some money to stay, which I have taken in the past, and people have varying experiences, but it's the worst mistake I ever made. Like there's no amount of money in the first 2 years of your life. It's not fun, is it, Kim?
No. So someone has asked, when would it be a good time to consider asking for a raise?
Every 6 months.
Every six. Who said every 6 months?
Sean.
Listen, they're never going to give you the pay rise. They're not going to give you the pay rise the first time you ask for it, but at least then you start the conversation, and the conversation can be around, okay, what do you need to see from me so that the next time we have this conversation, it's not a we'll have to think about it, but a yes. So you're setting expectations early on. You can then spend the next period of time going, okay, cool, these are the metrics I need to hit. This is what they need to see for it to be worthy of the conversation. Let's go and do that now. And then the next time, if they say, well, then you're getting an indication that perhaps this isn't somewhere that you can grow in the way that you want to. You might want to look out in the wider markets or have a more specific conversation. But I have had a situation where it took 4 years to get a pay rise, and by the time they were willing to do it, I jumped to another company. This is in COVID time, so I was there longer than I would have liked, but there's always it's not us that approve it. It's it's the global company, so these things take longer and whatnot. And when I did go to quit, went, what are you being paid elsewhere? Like, we'll match it. I was like, well, they're doubling it. And they're like, oh, we can't hit that. I was like, yeah, I only wanted a 20% pay rise, but look what happened. You've mucked about and now you find out, So I want to point out mucked about there, mucked about. So, it's prudent to have these conversations early and often, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'll throw sort of my experience in there. I say that there is a time to ask for a raise, and that's often at your annual appraisal. The issue with having that conversation every 6 months is that works for certain types of organization, but not others. Yeah. So if you have organizations with defined career pathways, for example, and salary bands and so on and so forth, then yeah, sure, try asking for a pay rise every 6 months. However, it does depend on your company policy. I know organizations where a pay rise is tied to a change in band. The change in band is tied to a salary. A pay rise is tied to a change in band. The change in band is tied to an annual appraisal. So your mileage may vary. One of the key things that I've noticed is, coming from a consultancy background, you need to effectively justify your existence in organizations such as those, because they're always seeking to cut the fat. They're always seeking to cut individuals who they don't feel are pulling their weight or are contributing well enough. And with respect to that, I'd say even in product-led and product-focused organizations, one of the key things that you can put together is something called a brag sheet. So every time you have contributed to a particular project or solved a particular problem, or you feel like you spearheaded and led and so on and so forth, you can present that to your manager at appraisal time and say, look, over the past year, over the past X period of time, I've contributed to these initiatives in this particular way. And from contributing to these initiatives, I've learned like this, I've grown like that, and therefore I do deserve a pay rise. And often that does assist in product-led and product-focused organizations, not just consultancies, because there is a chain of command that you're working through. You may say to your manager, I want a pay rise. However, if you struggle to justify it, then they will struggle to justify it to their engineering manager. The engineering manager will struggle to justify it to the vice president of engineering, and the vice president of engineering will then struggle to justify that particular pay rise to the chief operations officer.
Yeah.
Another key thing to note would be, there is somewhere, well, depending on your organization, there is most likely somewhere a document discussing appraisals, discussing pay rises, and discussing the sort of procedure for that. And so I would recommend highly reading that document cover to cover multiple times to sort of understand what your possible pay rise range is, and to sort of manage expectations. Because if you get to your annual appraisal period and you say, I want a 7% rise, or I want a 10% rise in line with inflation, and your salary document clearly says in black and white, your raise is capped at 5% or your raise is capped at 6%, unless these particular factors, then you set yourself up for disappointment by not reading up that document. And if you are thinking of transitioning away, then in all honesty, that is something that you should have started quite some time ago, not at the point of your annual appraisal where you feel that this organization has let you down.
Yeah, because that actually, you both kind of touched on it, but actually the follow-up to that question is, how much typically could you expect from a raise? And Sean, you mentioned 20%, and Leo, you just mentioned, well, 5%, depending on what the company says. But I guess actually the answer is it can depend on the company.
It depends on the organization. And it depends on the organization because as I said before, money can be exchanged for goods and services, but someone paying you for your labor is inherently it creates a form of transactional relationship.
Yeah.
And now the question becomes, they're giving you money. What is this company getting in exchange for providing me with this salary or with this paycheck at the end of the month? And some organizations value the stability. Some organizations value the fact that they have all these qualified engineers. Some organizations find it very, very difficult to hire and therefore want to incentivize using higher salaries than industry baseline. And so I think your raise is often predicated by what your company or what particular situation your company is in, right? Defense contractors, for example, they struggle really, really, really hard to hire people, and that is why some of the salaries at certain defense contractors are absolutely ridiculous. Because, you know, I have a moral objection to killing people. I think most of us do, directly and indirectly. Whereas other people may be less hesitant to develop technology that can be used for good or can be used for bad, for example.
Yeah.
It's you know, one thing to be mindful of in those conversations is, you know, a competitor will almost certainly pay you more than you'll get in an internal raise round. But again, it's to those non-tangible things as well. You know, if you think that you can grow and benefit more from sticking around because you can set expectations on how you want your career to grow and change, what you might want to be happier in that thing, and again, that number that the other company wants to offer you isn't the whole calculation there. You know, some of the biggest jumps I've made have often been a far less good job than I had before, and I've rued it. You know, so you know, bigger number, not necessarily, you know, a more rewarding or environment that you can grow in. These can be really damaging if you're not careful. Don't be hypnotized
and I think that is,
you know.
Yeah, and I think that is actually particularly important early on in your career, like getting the right experience, getting the right mentorship. Like you can't buy that, you know. And actually, exactly like you said, like it is worth, if the company is giving you the right support and learning, and you know, you've got a good growth plan and all of this stuff, like actually it is worth staying there. Someone has actually asked, are either of you aware of any companies that offer really good mentorship and training but maybe pay a bit less?
So this is sort of a question that I've encountered a lot. Oh, by the way, just building on Sean's point very quickly. The intangible things, yes, but also it is very traumatizing moving workplaces because your life is on hold for 3 months. You can't buy anything large for 3 months. You can't, if you're looking to move jobs to buy a house, for example, often the bank will say, hey, have you passed your probationary period? And then you are, you know, you're locked for 3 to 6 months. You're stuck aggressively saving every penny of your income just in case it doesn't work out. And, you know, given the current job market, that's a pain in the ass. Coming back to the question that was asked about mentorship, it's difficult because companies come in all shapes and sizes. Companies come in all sorts of organizational structures. And you may have moral oppositions to working at a certain type of company. I can list off, you know, a set of companies as long as my arm that provide decent mentorship. But the question now becomes, is it something that you're interested in? So my sort of response to that would be, there are companies which exist that detail information on their careers pages and that detail information about their company culture That's one good thing to do. I'd say the second good thing to do is, if you're interested at working at a particular type of company, then go to events and go to meetups possibly sponsored by that company, because that helps a lot.
Yeah.
I went to a meetup yesterday and I met some lovely, some phenomenal people from a variety of sort of tech companies, some that I wouldn't even have considered applying for because I didn't know anything about their culture. And it turns out that, certain organizations have phenomenal mentorship and phenomenal pay. And the only way I find that out is by speaking to some of their employees. So put yourself out into that sort of sphere and see who you meet.
Yeah, finding someone at the company who can vouch for them is way, because like companies can kind of lie on a careers page, and they're going to put something up to attract you. But yeah, exactly like you said, like if you can speak to people at the company, that goes a long way.
I think a key part of it as well is speaking in an informal setting versus a one-to-one interview.
Yeah, totally.
And I will also say, with respect to reaching out to people at the company, please do not message people on LinkedIn, because sometimes that can make them uncomfortable. I'll just throw that one out there.
Yeah, it's I've been very lucky. I was very lucky in the start of my career when I wasn't sure what I wanted to be exactly, and nor what I wanted to do. I knew JavaScript. I enjoyed making things for the web. I had learned Flash at university because that was important in 2009. Turned out great, that one. Kim, you were on the same course. You know how much Flash we did back then. We can't hide it anymore. It's in the public forum. But I got very, very lucky that it just happened. I was in a place, not even a company, just a part of the world where, being someone who wasn't sure what exactly he wanted to do, but had a bunch of skills, it opened up doors to companies where who were seeking exactly that sort of thing, would hire me to do the explorations and figure that out for myself. And 10 years later, I get to offer that to other people now. But just having those mentors kind of present themselves almost because you showed that you align with what their values are was really, really helpful for me to kind of get my footing and go, okay, I'm not just some 21-year-old kid who's fresh out of uni with a ton of debt and not a pound in his pocket. I'm a 21-year-old kid who's fresh out of uni without a pound in his pocket who makes weird stuff. And that was enough to kind of get me in the door of the other people who'd been at this longer, who made weird stuff, and then put some intent behind that, and you actually have a decent career path, which ultimately led to some of the biggest companies in the world. And like, to be your unabashed self, it would be my advice for that one. Make the things that you're interested in making. If you can find companies that align with your personal ethos or interest, that's a great place to start, because if they're your interest and ethoses, then it's like the people in the organization will also have that. Don't trust just what it says in the tin. Do talk to people, but it's a good indicator. And then when you get there, if you do choose to decide, that this is the place I think I can be happy, talk about yourself. One of the things I think that's really important that people are really shy from, in the same way that when it comes to money, people don't like to talk about it, is themselves. The only advocate who's always going to have your back truly is going to be yourself. You've got to believe in you, but we don't like to do it very often. So talk about what you're doing. If someone's not interested, they'll stop. But if they are interested, you've just found a kindred spirit, and they can be incredibly helpful as either partners or friends or mentors. And I've been so very lucky in my career to have so many people who've been willing to help me, and again, fundamentally, make weird stuff with me.
It's nice actually that topics came up in all three sessions now. Nathaniel spoke about, like, big yourself up, celebrate your successes, and then Lucy also spoke about brag book as well. So it's spot on. Now let's go back to salary, because that is the topic of this. Someone has asked, how would you expect your salary to change over the first few years of your career?
Oh God.
I mean, mine didn't grow for a decade, and then it shot up through the roof. Like, there's no golden rule. As long as you're beating inflation, which wasn't so much of a problem 5, 6, 7 years ago, but these days really matters. It's a good way to not be drowning under just life.
Mine did go up. So I actually started on a salary that was lower, and then after my 3-month probation, they put it up by 5,000, because they were like, okay, well, you've proved yourself. And, you come out of uni, like, they don't know what I'm worth. So they were like, well, in your probation, you are this. And I'll talk numbers. I was on, bear in mind, this was also 10 years ago now, because I left university in 2013. I think I started, if I remember rightly, I think it was 22 or 23 in London, which is actually quite low. But actually 10 years ago, that was actually quite normal. And then very quickly they were like, well, if you prove yourself in your first 3 months, when you sign on, you will then get a £5,000 pay rise, which is actually then more respectable in London. And then I stayed there for 2 years, and then I changed company and got, I think it was like a £10,000 pay rise. So you're saying yours didn't go up. Mine actually did go up quite a lot in my first 2.5 years, actually, in my career. But I only got that huge, the £10,000 increase, which was almost, you think, if I was on late 20s, that's almost a third of a pay increase by moving company. So
this is the thing. You'll always get the big jumps going somewhere else. Go on, Leo.
Yeah.
I will say, when listening to conversations like these, there are a variety of conflicting messages. Don't chase the money. Do what you enjoy. Make sure you get paid well. Make sure that there are increases. And so my takeaway would probably be, hey, again, if you have enough money to exchange for goods and services, and you yourself are satisfied, and you're happy in your environment, and you're happy with how much you earn, go for it. That's, I think that's the core piece of advice there.
Yeah.
You know, if you feel like, if you compare yourself to the wider market, let's say you're at a job and you interview, if you compare yourself to the wider market and you feel you're being underpaid, then that's something to bring up at your next appraisal. And organizations which support you as an employee will obviously say, hey, okay, we're going to pay you more money. We'll pay you this money, that money, the other money. But when it comes to sort of doing what you enjoy, as you said, Sean, I would happily take less money doing something that I actively like, something that I actively enjoy, in a place where I feel like my skills are being utilized, versus, you know, 6 figures for boring people.
Yeah. And actually that happened to me. So I started working for Codebar, and I knew, you know, at this point I was 8-9 years into my career. I absolutely knew there was no way Codebar would be able to pay me that wage, but I was prepared I took a pay cut because I was like, do you know what? I love Codebar. It's my passion. I feel so passionate about it. And I took a pay cut to do it. But do you know what? I feel so much more happy and proud of the work that I'm doing. And I actually want to quickly touch on something else. We're going to have to wrap up in a few minutes, but we were talking about negotiating, you know, and we're talking about a work center. But I just want to tell a quick story. I was in New York a couple of summers ago and had booked a month Airbnb. And this Airbnb host found out that me and my partner were software engineers, and he's an artist. And he said he knew that we kind of wanted to stay for another month. And he said, well, I actually need a website. And we knew it would take like maybe 2 days to build. Like, it was super simple. He's like, I'll give you the month's rent for free, which an Airbnb in New York is quite a lot for a month, if you build me this website. So we negotiated. I just want to touch on one person's question, and I think this is going to be the last question. I think it's actually an amazing question. Someone has said they're wondering if they've been in a job for 5 years, but actually they had to take a year off maternity leave. So do they say they've got 4 years experience or 5 years experience? And I think that's our last question.
I took a year out of my career in 22. So I hit 10 years and went, you know what? I've all my needs are met at the moment. I'm pretty happy. I'm going to take this year off. We've just been through plague, and I didn't see that coming at the end of my 20s. So it's like, I'm out. So if you're asking me what my experience is in that time, like, as calendar years, it's 11 now, maybe 13 if you count freelancing, which you really shouldn't, because I was a terrible freelancer. But if you want to, like, be honest with employers, or at least what I think the employers will look at is how long have you spent in jobs or doing something in industry. So in that case, I have 10 years experience. So I took that 1 year off. And when I came to look to get back into the workforce, they said, well, what were you doing in this gap? I said, it was a career break. I did start my own company. I still do that. But if you're looking for like years of experience in the line of work that you're asking for, then it's 6 of that and 5 of another. But yeah, if you've been on maternity leave, I appreciate it's a very different scenario. I wouldn't offer up that, that year was a negative thing at all. I'd say, no, I've been in this game for 5 years now. And yes, in that time I had a baby and I took time to look after it, but that's still a year where you have grown as a person. You may have grown your skill set as well. I don't think it should be ever a detractor where someone could go, well, we're not sure about this year. You've not been doing JavaScript from 9 to 5 and beyond. So I don't buy into that viewpoint
What
at all.
the wording you said, grown as a person, and what I think you meant is you've grown a person, not grown as a person.
That's it.
You've grown a
You can
human
do both
being.
simultaneously.
Yeah, and I think, you know,
Then baby.
I think there are so many, you know, I personally haven't had children, but I speak to so many women who have had that career break, and the amount of skills that year demonstrates, like time management, patience, like it shows so many skills. So like, don't say that, oh, I sat back in this year and I sat on a beach in Bali and did nothing. Like, no, like it demonstrates so many skills. So say, yeah, I've got 5 years experience. I did have a baby, but I've got 5 years experience. That's, like I say, I'm only saying what I would say. Like I can't talk from direct experience, but yeah, like that year demonstrates so many skills. And I speak to so many women who
Grace
almost
under
put
pressure,
themselves
sleep
down for having,
deprivation.
pardon?
Grace under pressure and handling situations with sleep deprivation. You know?
Sleep deprivation. Like, you were just able to function on 2 hours of back-to-back, probably less broken sleep. Like, you'd be able to just wipe the floor with everybody else in your team.
I will say, with respect to that, my sort of view on it is, it's a combination of learning and growing as a person, but also years underemployed. Like if you took maternity leave that was employer provided, you were still employed during that time. And
Yes.
I mean, somebody who has taken maternity leave under the purview, or under the purview of an employer, they haven't said, okay, I'm gonna have a baby, peace out, and just sort of left. They do still engage with their employer. They do still have their finger on the pulse, and of course they do still have, they do have to engage with their their teammates and the wider organization. So I would say, with respect to that, it is, if you've been working for 5 years and employed for 5 years, regardless of what you've been doing for those 5 years, you do have 5 years worth of experience, because it's a little bit, it's not as simple as, hey, I've been doing, as you've mentioned, Sean, JavaScript from 9 to 5 every day, because there are other skills that you do pick up while you work in an organization.
Someone's actually said at their current org there are check-in days for women on maternity leave, so they definitely weren't out of the loop during maternity leave. So, well, that's all. Well, we didn't get to answer all of our questions. I'm really sorry, but hopefully that there is enough there from this that you can take away. I'm very open about numbers. I think it's something that more people should be. Obviously, numbers do vary a little bit. But yeah, thank you so much, Leo and Sean, for coming along.